Hello, sixth graders. So today we're going to continue talking about rational numbers. Now, before we even start, I want to go over the vocab of rational numbers and integers. So an integer, is a counting number, its opposite, and 0. So that includes 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3, 0, and so on. It does not include fractions or decimals. A rational number, is any number that can be turned into a fraction. So rational numbers include integers, and they also include all those fraction numbers and decimals and all their negatives as well, like half, -half, 1/4, -1/4, 5/10, -5/10, and so on. So what we're going to do today, we're going to compare and order rational numbers. And I apologize for the titles being all messed up. I've changed it on this copy, but yours, I think, says 2-3. So if you want to change it to 3-3. So the first thing I want you to do is to think. Remember, the blank the negative number is from 0, the blank it actually is. So the farther the negative number is from 0, the smaller it actually is. So if you think about it like this on a number line, either on a horizontal line or a vertical number line, if we have 0 in the middle and we have all our positive numbers here and then all our negative numbers on the other side, the farther a negative number is from 0, the smaller it actually is. So think about the distance from 0. How far away is -5 from 0? It's 5. How far away is -2 from 0? It's 2. So -5 is farther away from 0, meaning that it is the smaller number. So how we would compare these two is -5 is less than -2. Because -5 is farther from 0. Now, if we look at another example, 10 and -12, I'll give you a little hint right now. Anytime you see a positive number compared to a negative number, you always know that that positive number is greater because positive numbers are always greater than negatives. So 10 is greater than -12. And the last one, -3 and -7. If we're comparing those two, how far away is -3 from 0? 3. How far away is -7 from 0? 7. So -7 is farther away from 0, meaning that it is smaller. So -3 is closer to 0, meaning that it is bigger. So -3 is greater than -7. So the next example, it says order from least to greatest. So you automatically know that the negative numbers are going to be smaller than the positive numbers. So now it just depends. Do we put -6 as our smallest number or -9 as our smallest number? What is smaller, -6 or -9? Well, -9 is farther away from 0. So -9 is the smallest, then -6. And if we were comparing 8 and 13, 13 is the largest, so 8 would come next, and 13 is the largest. So farthest away from 0 over here. For positives, it's also farthest away from 0, but that means that it is greater. Now, the next one, order from greatest to greatest. So Miss Ross, I made a mistake there. I want you to order from greatest to, if you want to delete that and write least. So if you want to change that for me in your notes, order from greatest to least. So do that right now. Take these numbers and in your box right here, order those numbers from greatest to least or biggest to smallest. So the greater numbers are obviously going to be our positive numbers. So the biggest positive number I see here is 11. So 11 is our greatest. Then the next greatest positive is 8. And the next greatest positive is 4. So far we're at greatest. Now we're going to deal with our negatives. I see -1, -5, and -12. So we're looking for the biggest negative number, meaning the negative number that is closest to 0. So out of -1, -5, and -12, what negative is closest to 0? -1 is closest to 0. So that's the biggest negative number. And then we have -5, and then we have -12. So this is our list labeled from greatest to least. Okay? And make sure in your notes, if you did this already, check to make sure that your list compares to mine. So before we move on to our next section, I'm bringing back this chart again because you're going to need to reference this chart if you're not familiar with your decimal and fraction equivalents. So again, when we do this, just make sure that you compare, if you're trying to find an equivalent, let's say the 75/100ths, okay, if you draw a line straight down, 75/100ths is the same thing as 1, 2, 3/4, and it's also the same thing as 6/8. All right, so refer back to this chart if you ever need to find out a decimal or fraction equivalent. So let's look at some other examples. So when comparing fractions and decimals, make sure they all, and I put this in quotes, look the same, okay, before comparing. So what I mean by that, if you're dealing, like let's look at this example right here. If you're dealing with decimals and fractions, it's hard to compare a fraction to a decimal, okay, because they don't look the same. So what I mean by look the same is that you need to make sure all of your numbers are either all fractions or all decimals, okay? So use the decimal fraction equivalencies chart to help. So the first thing you're going to do is to turn all the numbers into decimals or turn them all into fractions. Now, personally, I like turning everything into decimals because for me, it's easier to compare if they're all in decimal form. You may think the opposite, and you may think it's easier to compare if they're all in fraction form. That's totally fine, but I'm going to change all of these into decimals. So -3 and 25/100ths stays the same because it's already in decimal form. -3 and 1/8, okay, that is not in decimal form. So we need the decimal equivalent to 1/8. So if you look at your chart, I see 1/8 is right here, okay. If we draw a straight line, it's between 0 and 1/10 and 0 and 10/100ths and 0 and 15/100ths. So I'm going to say it's around 0 and it's around, let's say, 12/100ths. Okay, because that's a number that's in between that. So -3 and 1/8 is around -3 and 12/100ths. Okay, again, it's an estimate, but we know it's between these two decimals. Okay, and again, we know that that 1 here is really a 1, 0. So it's between 10/100ths and 12/100ths. Okay, or 10/100ths and 15/100ths. So I'm going to say around 12 or 13/100ths. Okay, now the next one, -3 and 3/4. We need to figure out what 3/4 is in fraction form. I see 3/4 is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So if we draw a straight line up, it's equal to 75/100ths. So this is -3 and 75/100ths. And the next one is -3, and it's already in a decimal form, 1/10. But in order to compare, all of these have 2 decimal places. So I'm going to just add a 0 so they all have the same number of decimal places, so it's easy to compare. All right? Now that they're all in the same form and they all look the same, okay, we are going to order from least to greatest, okay? Now they're all decimals, which means that the lowest decimal is going to be the one that's farthest away from 0. So out of all 4 of these decimals, which decimal is the farthest away from 0? If you think about it on a number line, okay? Continue this a little bit, -4, okay? They all kind of lie in this area, but which decimal is the farthest away from 0? The farthest away is -3 and 75/100ths, so that's the smallest. What is the next farthest away from 0? Is -3 and 25/100ths. And the next farthest away from 0 is negative 3 1/8. Or around, it could be negative 3, and we said around 12 hundredths. And the greatest decimal, which is the negative that is closest to 0, is negative 3 1/10 or negative 3 10 hundredths, however you want to write it, okay? So again, when comparing fractions and decimals, just make sure they're all in the same form, either all fractions or all decimals, because it's hard to compare if they look different, okay? Because I don't know what's greater, 3/4 or 1/10 or 1/8 and 1/10. It's really hard to compare. All right, so attached to your attached to this Ed puzzle is going to be a Google form where you're going to just be comparing numbers, okay, comparing different integers, comparing different rational numbers, and you're also going to be ordering rational numbers. So again, the biggest thing for this is to make sure they all look the same. And refer back to your notes, guys. Always reference this chart. If you're not sure, you can always find decimal and fraction equivalents by looking at this chart. Okay, so complete that Google form that's attached to this Ed puzzle in order to get more practice with these skills. And let me know if you do have any questions. Have a good day, guys. Bye.